So federal workers are back in office buildings like these 3 days a week. We've told you some stories about how unpopular that is with some workers, the issues it's created in those buildings and on the roads, and now we have some information about how that decision was made. These Treasury Board documents, requested through Access to Information by the largest public sector union and shared with CBC. They show officials were weighing public scrutiny, what other organizations were doing, and that they had very little internal information when they made the decision on the 3-day mandate. Let's break it down. Starting in May 2022, as COVID restrictions eased and the government was developing return to office plans, there's a slide deck laying out the options. Option 1, flexible first. It didn't require office time depending on the kind of work being done. Option 2, scheduled. It requires a certain number of days in the office. Option 3, ad hoc, rewinds to pre-pandemic office days, but with more telework. The deck actually recommends flexible first, saying it promises the best productivity, inclusivity, and environmental impact, but it notes it could be disruptive for management and subject to negative public scrutiny. That'll come up again. By December, Treasury Board went ahead with a version of the scheduled option. Organizations had to require either 2 or 3 days a week in the office. The documents say even that put managers on the spot as they juggled lack of workspace and IT problems. Some were granted extensions. Some departments had a hard time hiring and keeping employees. The documents say the ability to work from home was a big draw for people considering new jobs. They also say there were evidence gaps on the impact of hybrid work across the public service. Then this graph shows up in January 2024. It shows of the 81% of departments following an in-office mandate, 64% of organizations report at least 60% compliance among employees. 28% of organizations didn't provide comparable data. Are you following? Because those numbers kept getting repeated, including in a draft memo to Treasury Board President Anita Anand recommending the 3-day mandate. The union says these numbers should have been sorted out through consultation.
If there's issues, then deal with the issues. You don't impose a 3-day in-office mandate on everyone as a result.
That document recommending the change doesn't talk about productivity. There aren't really any productivity statistics for federal workers in the document, but a survey in the documents showed workers reporting they felt more productive from home, and another suggested people with hybrid arrangements felt more engaged. Most of the research done by other organizations looked at by the government show no loss in productivity with hybrid work, and that employers have to find their own balance. In a statement for this story, Treasury Board said, "Aligning with national and global trends helps strengthen the credibility of the public service and supports the Government of Canada's ongoing efforts to recruit new talent in a variety of functions."
They had an opportunity here to really modernize the public service and move it forward. And yet here we are talking about cookie-cutter approaches, butts in seats, and we're not really talking about services to those who reside in Canada.
Meanwhile, a recent study from the C.D. Howe Institute says remote work is here to stay. I asked the researcher behind it if she thought there is a risk of losing people because of the return to office mandate.
Those same employees who were searching for a job in another department or another unit, they could just as easily start looking for a job somewhere else entirely outside the federal government. And that is where I would worry most about us losing our best public servants to these other industries where they're going to find that flexibility with good pay.
Right now, we're seeing the effects of the return to the office mandate on the roads and transit systems of the National Capital Region. It might not be too long before we see its effect on who works for the federal government.